Good evening, residents of Glendale, and to the candidates for council and the treasurer positions who are with us tonight. Those of you who are watching virtually will have a chance to see our candidates. And I want to thank, first of all, the Harry Whiting Brown organization for organizing this event. I know it's really a very typical, very Glendale and very American kind of event to have a meeting between residents and candidates for political office. I'd also like to thank Beth Evenshine of the League of Women Voters, who will be serving as our moderator tonight. I've always felt that a healthy democracy is best served by contested elections, and this year we certainly have that. We have 9 candidates who are in the running for 6 different positions. There are 6 candidates who are running for the 4 council positions, 2 for the treasurer position, and we have 1 who is running unopposed for village clerk. And let me just say that because she is unopposed, and only because she's unopposed, and wants to give as much time as she can to the other candidates, our village clerk, Becky Terrell, has decided not to attend this meeting. However, I'm going to ask that when you do go to the polls, look for her name, and if you feel it's appropriate, vote for her to support her and the very vital job that she does for the village. This forum this year is even more important than it has been in the past. Due to COVID concerns, some of our candidates are not feeling comfortable walking the village and meeting people close up. So this is going to be a chance to meet the candidates at least virtually. Finally, the residents who want to learn more can learn more at the village website, www.glendaleohio.org. They will find there a link to description of the positions of various that are involved in the election, and there will be a link to the recording of this event. So with that, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but all I can say is please vote. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amy Lord Fleury, President of HWB.
Hi, I'm Amy Fleury. I'm president of the Harry Whiting Brown Community Center. Welcome to this forum for the candidates for council and treasurer for the village of Glendale. This forum is sponsored by the Harry Whiting Brown Community Center, who neither support nor oppose candidates for village office. All candidates for these offices were invited to participate. Questions for this forum were submitted via email and compiled by trustees of the Harry Whiting Brown Community Center. Some of these questions were edited for length or clarity. Final selection of questions will be made by the moderator. This forum is being taped by ICRC-TV, which broadcasts on cable TV and over the web. Tonight's proceedings will be available for replay in entirety and unedited on their website, ICRC-TV.com. Tonight's moderator comes to us from the League of Women Voters. I present to you Beth Evenshine.
Thank you, Amy. It is a pleasure to be here. I love doing smaller towns forums because their citizens are so much more active than in the big city. Many thanks to the center, their forums committee, for organizing this event. It's a challenge to put one of these together. Amy and the committee will agree to that. As information, last year the League of Women Voters celebrated 100 years of nonpartisan work educating voters about candidates and ballot issues. Not coincidentally, the League was formed by many of the suffragists leaders immediately after the 19th constitutional amendment was ratified, giving women the right to vote. It only took 70 years of suffragists' work to finally get there. This evening, we have 2 candidates running for office. Treasurer, one of the 2 to be elected for a 4-year term. There are 6 candidates for council, 4 to be elected for a 4-year term. We'll begin the evening with the candidates giving a minute and a half to introduce themselves. We would like to hear why they are seeking the office and what qualifications they have. There are other questions that we will ask throughout the evening, and responses to those questions are for 2 minutes. At the end, the candidates are given 1.5 minutes each for a closing statement. A timekeeper, Mendel Jones, will hold up, couldn't read my own writing, will hold up a 30-second sign, meaning you have 30 seconds remaining, and then at the end of the time, she'll hold up the stop sign. I will not stop you in mid-sentence unless it's a run-on sentence, then, well, you'll see what I have to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. We'll begin the introductions with Amy Baldridge.
Good evening. I'm Amy Baldridge, and I'm a 17-year Glendale resident. My professional background lies in education and clinical social work. My husband and I have 3 kids who we homeschool, and we love living in Glendale. I've been involved with a number of community organizations over the years, and this truly feels like home to my family. I want Glendale to thrive well beyond any of our lifetimes. Running for Village Council, to me, is a different way to serve the community compared with what I've already been doing. I think I can offer fresh perspective and energy to this position while increasing representation for younger residents and families. Most of us know that Glendale operates on a very tight budget, and I'd like to be part of the discussion about how we can give ourselves a boost and be more proactive about our economic future. Solutions may not be simple, but the conversation and a steady forward movement is vital. I would also like to see an atmosphere of stronger communication from and with our local government so we can build a better sense of trust and confidence in our elected officials. If I'm elected, I know there will be a learning curve, and I've been doing my homework, interviewing numerous people in order to develop a full picture of the way things work here, our challenges and opportunity areas. I've spoken with residents, current and past council members, key employees in the village, and business owners. I hope to be elected and hit the ground running in January. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jeffrey Bass Smith.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Bass Smith. Hopefully you have seen my yellow sign with the hyphenated name. I am campaigning to continue on your village council. This is my first election. I was appointed to council because of a vacancy. I asked to be appointed because it is an opportunity to participate rather than only observing, and to make a positive contribution to decisions. I qualify to continue as your councilman as I am active. I am involved. I work hard to understand what the challenges are facing the village. I'm reasonably intelligent, educated, and have some useful life experiences. As a president of a small corporation, I faced the challenges of meeting payroll, and I am able to understand the challenges facing the village, knowing what the challenges are facing the village. I'm reasonably intelligent, educated, and have some useful life experiences. As a president of a small corporation, I faced the challenges of meeting payroll, and I am able to understand the challenges facing the village, knowing what the challenges facing the village. the issues of revenue, expenses, and the need to cut costs.
Thank you. Mike Bessel.
Good evening. I'd like to say thanks to HWB and especially Amy Lord-Fleury and the League of Women Voters for being here and for putting this on, and everyone involved in that. I'd like to acknowledge my fellow candidates for office here in the room tonight. Thank you for coming and participating. My name is Mike Bessel. I'm running for the office of Village Council. I'm currently a council member and would like to be reelected. My family and I have lived in Glendale for 25 years. My wife and I raised our 6 children here, and they loved the experience. The community's been very good to my family, and serving on council is a way for me to give back, to help preserve all the good things that Glendale is today and protect it for future generations. I've enjoyed working with council and village administration and all the residents, and especially resident volunteers during my time on council. We've accomplished a lot. And I would like to continue to serve as we continue very important major projects such as repairs and updates to water infrastructure, resurfacing of roads, updates to our stormwater system that will help mitigate water overflows that occur during major rain events. I'd also like to work on an update to our 5-year financial plan. We do that each year, and our current council has gotten quite good at that, and we need to continue that work. I have over 30 years of business management experience. I serve on several boards and advisory committees in Greater Cincinnati. I've served as vice mayor and was appointed to that position by my fellow council members, and I would be honored to continue to serve the residents of the village of Glendale.
Thank you. Alan Hobeller.
Good evening. I've been a resident in Glendale here for 37 years. I am the longest-serving council member. I've been the chairman of every single committee that we've had in those years. I'm quite familiar with the workings of our council and our village. I find myself in a unusual position because I know where everything happens here and how it's supposed to work. I'm in a family business. We have 4 companies right now, and I've done every single job that's required of an owner of a business. And I think that our council today, our incumbents, have done a fine job, and I hope that you will all feel the same way and vote that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Nancy Masenko.
Thank you. I'm running for re-election out of gratitude. Everyone knows Glendale is special, but you have to live here to know that it's more than beautiful streets, great restaurants and shops, and a fantastic museum in a train depot in the village square. This is where community is defined by its people, where neighbors look out for one another and honestly care about one another. You know how this works. What happens when we hear of someone who needs a hand? In seconds, we're there to help. No one has to ask. That's what we do. So I'm grateful to live in a village with compassion at its core, and I want to work to help keep Glendale strong and vibrant through its heritage, its future, but most of all, its people. I bring 4 years of experience on council with measurable contributions, and more than 8 years leadership experience as an officer and trustee of Glendale Heritage Preservation. I'm a generalist with a strong background in communication, so I tend to be inquisitive. I'm impatient. I'm the one who always wants the village to move faster on things like the quiet zone, Sharon Road paving, or a junk car ordinance. I also bring high energy and a commitment to listen and a promise to work hard for all the people of Glendale. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Vischer.
Thank you. My name is Ron Vischer. My wife and I have been residents of Glendale for over 40 years. We've raised 2 sons here, one of whom is on our volunteer fire department. My qualifications are many and include 37 years of leadership and management experience at Procter & Gamble. I decided to run for council based on events that occurred over the last year. I was surprised when the village started to evaluate selling our parks for housing development, including Johnny Park, a treasured urban forest hidden on the northeast side of the village. To me, selling our village land simply contradicts our history, our values, and the planning that made us a National Historic District. So I spoke up. Then, the village council started to consider a zoning application that would demolish a historic school, Eckstein. To me, the application as proposed was a non-starter. I recognized the tremendous national value of our history and that outside funds would be available to save the building. So again, I spoke out. I believe if you're critical of what is being done, you should be willing to do it yourself. So I decided to run for village council to ensure that all residents have a voice in our government. My responsibility as your representative on council is to be your voice, to understand your thinking, and to share your feelings in making the many decisions that may come before us. My agenda is simple: better communication, collaboration, and fiscal responsibility.
Thank you. You timed that perfectly.
Thank you.
The treasurers, the treasurer candidates. Michael Beaugrand.
Hello, I'm Mike Beaugrand. My wife Carolyn and I have lived in Glendale at 44 East Sharon Avenue for last 35 years. We raised our 2 children here, and they both attended Princeton School from start to finish. During our time in Glendale, we have always volunteered our time for the village and its many organizations. We love Glendale for what it offers. More recently, I've served as the treasurer for the last 5 years. My experience working for Procter & Gamble for 35 years as an engineer manager, leading and supporting projects all across the globe, has positioned me well to provide guidance to council and the administration. The role of treasurer is one of fiscal responsibility and accountability to its residents. The treasurer does not get to vote on anything. They are the ones who signs off on the budget sent to the state and confirms the funds to support matching grants. They're also responsible for investing our savings in securities allowed by the Ohio Revised Code. Everything with no risk while receiving the highest return possible with the given constraints. The treasurer is also responsible for ensuring council and the administration does not make financial promises to support special interest groups or personal crusades that have not been approved by council. I look forward to answering questions to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you. And Leslie Cooper, please.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to participate in the Harry Whiting Brown Candidates Forum. My name is Leslie Cooper, and I'm running for treasurer for the Village of Glendale. Here are a few facts about myself. I am the 4th generation and the only candidate raised in Glendale since birth. I am currently on the Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation Commission. Previously, I was a member of the first preschool class at Glendale Elementary, participated in Glendale Youth Sports where I played soccer, and was a member of the Girl Scouts where I planted trees in the Oak Street Greenbelt. I am also a 1986 graduate of Princeton High School. I have a master's degree in business administration from Johns Hopkins University and 25 years of public service, where I served in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Georgia, and Michigan. I spent 6 months in Rwanda, Africa, helping to relocate displaced children with the genocide wars, and worked in London screening applicants for possible funding for their international non-governmental organizations. My current employment includes working for the Cincinnati VA Medical Center as a clinical social worker. I am running for treasurer because we in Glendale need a treasurer to be more fiscally responsible, committed to improve fiscal transparency, communications, and accountability for its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start with the first question. You have 2 minutes. Please be aware of the yellow and the red signs. First question is, there are required architectural specifications for new businesses in Glendale, but there is glaring disrepair in the heart of the village. Please discuss your recommendations for generating revenue for the maintenance and care of our village. We'll begin with Mike Bessel.
There are those specifications that you speak of, depending on what type of building it is. If it is a village-owned building, we have plans in place and continue to maintain our village-owned properties. That includes Town Hall, where we sit today, the police station, our village offices, and a handful of other buildings within the village. The train depot is another example. There are some buildings in the village that are not in a good state of repair, and I think that our current village administrator does a fairly good job of trying to keep up with building owners. However, there are some that are uncooperative. I'm not in a position to say what steps the village can take on a property that is questionable. However, when a property gets to a point where it is in a state of disrepair that becomes a hazard, the village has and will continue to bring actions against that property or property owner in order to rectify the situation.
Thank you. Next is Michael Bogrand.
For the properties that the village owns, the biggest issue that we have is not that we don't know what to do with the buildings. It's a matter of funds. Since the village has limited funds, priorities that are established every year, and things get repaired at a very slow pace. You need to view the village as an old house, that everything has to be done and accounted for on some frequency. You need to set up a budget for that and ensure that you get these things done in a timely manner. The problem that we have in the village is that we know what needs to be done, but executing those on a timely manner that satisfies residents is the biggest challenge, and that is lack of funds. Funds provide resources for the administration to address those things, and that's really the biggest issue that we have here. As it contends to buildings that are not owned by the village itself, we have rules and regulations, and we have an inspector that follows those and cites the owners of those buildings whenever they're not meeting those requirements. Again, that takes a long time, much longer than I think most of us would like to see. And again, it's a matter of resources. So funding slows everything down.
Thank you. Amy Baldridge.
It's a little bit difficult to add something new to what's already been said as somebody who's not currently sitting on council, but I think we're always going to come back to an issue of funding. There's a shoestring budget that we operate the village on, as I understand, and I think that's something that we need to be looking to in the future. As far as the properties, again, it depends on if it is actually a village-owned property, if it is a commercial property that is privately owned, which a lot of our public buildings are, where there are shops and restaurants or empty spaces, and then whether it's simply what appears to be an abandoned home that is unkept. And so I think there's a different process in place for those different things, but I won't take more time adding to what's already been said on that.
All right, thank you. Ron Vischer.
In terms of looking for funding, one of the first things I do is think about looking externally. And by that I mean we are a historic district, a national historic district, and if the building is in part of that district, there are a number of sources of fundings for rehabilitation that might be obtainable simply by asking for a grant to do that rehabilitation. We had a similar experience with Eckstein School recently, where we didn't know how to rehabilitate the building internally from internal resources in Glendale, and we chose to pursue opportunities outside, and we were successful in getting the Cincinnati Preservation Society to step forward and provide initial funding, and now there's a fund drive that's occurring nationally to try to provide the resources to save the building. So the first step I would take is, instead of thinking about internal funding, I would look for external funding so that it's not a burden on the taxpayers. If that external opportunity is not successful, then I think we need to look at the Planning Commission and decide exactly how much it's going to cost to do it, and see if there's funding available through our internal budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Howeller?
Yeah, hi. The entire problem that we have in Glendale is that we don't spend Glendale money on private buildings. The Eckstein School is a prime example of a building that was no longer owned by the Village of Glendale. I would refuse to let anybody tear down a historic building. I've voted against all the demolition that I've had up for vote. But it's on the other hand, it's not up to the village to find funding or to pay for funding on a privately owned building. On our own buildings, we have enough problems that, we've got, these buildings are 130 years old, some of them, and the pipes are bad and what have you. That's where we should spend our money, not on trying to save somebody else's private property. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie Cooper?
I feel that when looking at the buildings, of course, I think we should pull from Glendale any architects, any brick masons, any plumbers, to see if a committee could be formed to help reconcile the building. If funding was not available in Glendale, of course, there is the state of Ohio national resources. There may be even a pool of money in the southwestern Ohio district or even Hamilton County. I think there are other resources that Glendale could collaborate with in order to assist with rehabbing a village-owned building, or even to motivate a private owner to rehab or repair current conditions on a privately owned building. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy I knew I'd do it. Masenko.
Thank you. A lot has been said. I'm assuming the question was not directed to public buildings the village owns. In that case, as Mr. Bogran has said, the maintenance of these buildings is determined by the budget that is set every year, and we appear to be staying on top of most of those issues. I think the question was about the privately held businesses or privately held buildings in the village. And in that case, it is a little tricky in that the law favors the owner. And so for the village to step in would be inappropriate, other than having a compliance officer address a particular building if it is determined to be dangerous and needs to be attended in that way.
Thank you. Jeff Bass-Smith.
I think that the condition of the village property is certainly on the mind not only of residents but of all the council. The issue with privately owned property is addressed as frequently and as well as possible. I think the village recently had to condemn a property and because it was not kept up. And that process was extended. It takes a long time to move through the legal system. So as much as we would like to do a lot of actions, it is something that takes time and resources because it frequently ends up in court. As far as the village-owned property, as we've all acknowledged, it's kind of like your own home. We all own it, we all love it, and it needs to be maintained, but we have to allocate enough resources to do that. And those resources are limited because our only income is our real estate tax. And we have talked about levies and various resources, methods of raising funds. Sometimes it's approved, the last time it was not approved. However, keeping in mind, we're like a retired person, of which I am one. I have a limited income. I have to allocate it to the priorities, and what's left we will use to allocate to the most needed of problems. A problem, one of those recently was the replacement of the roof on the village offices. So keep in mind, I don't know the solution. There are other solutions. I know that our administrator and our mayor look for various opportunities for funds, and they will continue to do so.
Thank you. And our second question is, what is your position on introducing a city tax to improve Glendale's financial situation? We will start with Leslie Cooper.
Well, first I would ask what type of tax would be implemented. Would it be an income tax, or would it be higher property taxes? Those are questions that I would have to determine before making that decision. But I do not agree with an income tax. I think, again, there are other resources in Hamilton County, the state of Ohio, even the southwest region of Ohio that could help support or allocate funding to help alleviate some of the tax issues, especially for infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Masenko.
For more than 10 years, Glendale's revenues have remained flat. At the same time, the compounded inflation rate produced an overall price increase of more than 25%. For the past 4 years, I've been part of the council's budget planning under these conditions, and I assure you we've made some tough choices to balance the budget every year without increasing taxes. Clearly, this isn't sustainable. Now, the village has $8 million in a general improvement fund, but tapping that money is not the answer. As long as we're good stewards and don't touch the principal, that money can generate enough interest to pay for large infrastructure improvements for the foreseeable future. If we spend it, it's gone forever. So, council must address the long-term financial picture of the village. We can't cut and defer our way to financial stability. We have to look at taxes.
Thank you. Michael Beaugrand.
That's a very interesting question. As I mentioned as treasurer, my job is to provide options to council when I see we have a budget deficit. I've brought up an income tax before. Council has been reluctant to look at that, just I think maybe for the visuals. But I need to remind residents and council, there's like 950 municipalities in Ohio. And of those, there's only a handful that do not have an income tax to support their operation. Glendale is one of those. How long can we do that? I don't think we could do that for much longer. Residents may not know, but council has the authority to impose up to a 1% income tax on its residents without going through a public vote. Would never recommend that we do something like that, because I think if we did a 0.25%, we could probably generate about $250,000 a year, which would be about 10% of our operating budget. There's other avenues too to raise funds, levies, but levies are complicated. We currently have 2 levies that support our infrastructure or our village, and those are renewable every 2 years. And it's a challenge because people see tax and they say no. So I think the first offering would be a safety levy because it seems to be more palatable to council and residents because safety is everything, and that could help address some of the expenses that we have in our police department, which is 40% of our budget, and also our fire department. I think residents would probably vote for that. And I would really encourage council to get on top of this very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Bass Smith.
I hesitate to talk about a tax because I do pay a tax myself. We all do. And it's never fun. But keep in mind, as I said earlier, the village runs only on a real estate tax, and the real estate values were recently assessed. Some homes went up in value, some went down. And that change in rates can affect a correction, makes no effect because we only get a percentage of that tax on the real estate for the village. So even if the value of your property goes up, the village only gets a certain share of that. Yet an income tax is not favorable to many people, but it is probably more equitable because those who have a larger income can afford a tax, and those who are on a modest or lesser income, the effect of the tax would be less aggressive. It's not a pleasant thought, but there really are limited alternatives, and if we don't have that revenue, all of the desires, all of the goals, all the necessities that we have will need to be limited in their solution because we will not have the revenue, we will not have the money.
Thank you. Ron Vischer.
I think in answering the question about how to approach decisions.
What is your position on introducing a city tax to improve Glendale's financial situation?
Thank you for the reminder. I think the proper position on addressing whether to introduce a city tax or not is one that requires a significant amount of fiscal planning. And I think the council should be thinking about putting together I guess it's a special committee to look at what our revenue plans over the out years look like. A lot of our income certainly comes from levies, but there also is income that comes through service charges, that come through donations, that come through grants that we may be successful in obtaining, that come from the interest on our invested funds, and also come from rentals. And there may be opportunities to grow those sources of funds also, especially in the out years. I think if we have a plan that runs for a period of time, we'd be able to know whether or not we need to have an increase in tax in the short term, and we'd be able to educate the residents. I agree with many of the people that have spoken before me that have said that raising a tax based on what council does by itself is probably the wrong decision, that we ought to get a lot of residents' input before we do that. And so that would be the two steps I take. One is make a plan, and secondly, get residents' input. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Baldridge.
Thank you. As I have been educating myself over the last few months, I have found out that, as Ms. Masenko said, we have been operating under the very same budget for the last 10 years in Glendale. When the market crashed back in 2008, we had to make some significant cuts around here that many of us remember. And costs have only gone up. And so it is a very tight budget. I know oftentimes our property taxes are considered relatively high, but again, Glendale does not get most of that. A lot of that goes to the schools and isn't coming directly back into the village budget. As I've been out meeting people, talking with people, I'm hearing a lot of people say, what do you think about an income tax? Is it time for an income tax? And I'm hearing a lot of people are in favor of that. Candidly, I am very open to that too. I think something like a 1% income tax, we would very quickly start seeing improvement around town. People have different ideologies about taxes and where money should come from and how it should be spent. So I'll be candid and say that I would be okay with that. I would rather pay a 1% income tax to Glendale than the 2% we've been paying out to Cincinnati in the past. Based on data from about 5 years ago, a 1% income tax in Glendale would generate roughly $1 million for the village. And that would be a very considerable increase to what we're working with right now. And I don't think it would take long at all before we would start seeing and feeling the impact and the improvement of that. I do think it's something that the community should vote on, but that is my opinion on that.
Thank you. Alan Hoeller.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that's been said so far. One of the things that I disagree with is what Mr. Vischer said, that there is no budget. We have a plan. Our budget goes out 4 or 5 years. Mr. Bessel has been working on that for the last 3 years. And it's not a secret that we budget the money based on our income, our tax income. When Princeton School District, which is basically where we get our tax base from, when they can only do a D rating in the state of Ohio, our property values go down. When our property values go down, our taxes go down. We have renewal taxes every so often that have to be passed, or we have to dig into the money that Mr. Beaugrant has been so wisely putting together as a ladder investment, so that when we need money, there is money, it comes due, and if we don't need the money, we roll it over into another part of that savings account. I think that the income tax is something that I don't think that we're there yet. I pay income tax to about 4 different entities. I pay for Evendale, I pay for Sharonville, I pay for Cincinnati, and I pay for a couple other states. So I know the burden of income tax, and anything that we would do here in the village would then have to, would come off the other taxes that we pay. So it's actually, an income tax here would not be a big hit on your personal finances. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. To improve communications between the village's officials and all of its citizens, how will you inclusively solicit input from those who are not just those you live near and those you usually talk with? Let's start with Mike Bessel.
Ma'am, can I ask, is everyone going to answer each question?
Yes.
I don't think I responded to the previous question yet.
Uh-oh.
About finances and tax levy.
I knew that would happen.
Okay, that's okay.
My high tech.
I can do that. I'll be as quick as I can.
Okay.
So regarding introducing, you said a city tax to generate more income, and I'm assuming that means just introducing another tax or additional taxes. We will face this situation where we have to increase revenue. I wish we had increased revenue now. As several people have already pointed out, we've had flat revenue for the past several years in the village. And we've worked very hard to reduce expenses and try to keep a balanced budget for the village. Recently, some changes in our village administration and especially in some salaries have given us some breathing room. So we will have a small surplus this year, and for 2022, we are likely to have also, again, a small surplus. And that gives us about a year to work on this. from now. The point that was made about our village savings and invested funds is a good one. We have roughly $8 million there. The water plant has a little over $1 million in its reserves, and those funds will last for a very long time if we're good stewards of those funds to take care of major infrastructure improvements in the village. If we spend it now, then it's gone forever. Currently, there's not as much interest being earned on those funds, but it could improve in the future, but again, we need to preserve those funds. Regarding a plan, we do have a 5-year plan that projects out village operating and also village capital expenditure. And I would say that within this year time frame, council should be sure to develop a plan for increased revenue, and if that is an increased tax, whether it is a new tax levy or whether it is an income tax, it should go to the voters. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll read the next question again. And my apologies again to you, Mike.
That's fine.
To improve communications between the village's officials and all of its citizens, how will you inclusively solicit input from those who are not just those who live near you and those who you usually see? Mike Bessel, we're going to start with you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll overlook somebody else next.
Yes, that is a very good question. I've thought about this a lot. All of our committee meetings as council and all of our council meetings are open to the public. Everyone is welcome to join in those meetings. Unfortunately, they are scheduled at a certain time, and we struggle to get 6 council people and the mayor together to have a meeting. So I understand that a lot of people in the village don't have time to attend those meetings, and maybe it doesn't even fit their schedule. How we could improve communications, we do have and need to consider possibly better use of our village email account to solicit input from village residents, and perhaps even proactively let people know that minutes from committee meetings are available for them to read. They are available now, but it might be that many people don't know that they're there. So I would say through email that the village has, through village newsletter that the village can use, and through better promotion of our committee meetings and minutes generated at those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Hoeller.
I agree with Mike on this. Every meeting that we have is open to the public. The minutes of every council meeting, the committee meeting, are published and they're on the website. I think that the council has done a fairly decent job of communicating to whoever is interested. I think if you are interested in the finance committee, you come attend the finance committee meeting. We have nothing to hide. There's nothing that we discuss in these committee meetings that is not open to the public, and the only time we go into executive session is when we're dealing with salaries and personnel issues. So I think it's incumbent on the citizen to get interested and come in and put in their opinions, and we will listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Fisher.
I would like to first respond to Mr. Holweiler, who said that I didn't understand some things that Village Council did in his answer to a previous question. I had talked about a budget plan that I thought we needed to improve upon. I think that the aspects of the budget plan were ones that would address grants and donations, and while grants and donations aren't linear like taxes are. There are mathematics to handle the uncertainties of including those kinds of things in a budget plan. I haven't seen that aspect of a budget plan addressing grants and donations. So in responding to the question about how to solicit input from and communication, I think communication, first of all, is a two-way street. It involves both communicating outward but also listening. And one thing that we can control as council members is how we listen to our residents. There are things like town hall meetings that can help interact with residents because they are interactive. And I think our village council meetings could also improve by being more interactive. We tend to take resident input and limit it to a certain time frame, often 5 minutes. And then we have little opportunity for the council members to respond to the input that they have heard. I found that active listening is a very good way to improve communications. There also are ways to do consumer research using tools like SurveyMonkey that every once in a while crosses my email address, and that might be possible. And then personally, I've started something called Village Viewpoints, which is a village newsletter that allows individuals to put opinions out, to put facts out that they think might be great interest to the community. And I've offered that capability to many authors that might like to participate on Village Viewpoints.
Thank you. Michael Beaugrand.
That's a great question. And including in my own household, my wife always asks me, it's like, how come I didn't know about this? How come I didn't know about that? And the reality is because is lack of participation in the process that exists for all residents. To give you an example, as treasurer, I have to present the budget, the estimated budgets to residents before it goes to council. So there's an open meeting for that every year. It's published, documented, sent out to the airwaves and everything else. In 5 years of doing this, I've had 7 residents in total. I don't mean every year, in total, participate in that process. Actually 3 this year. Mr. Ron Vischer was one of them. But so it's a two-way street. The two-way street is there's a lot out there if residents decide to be engaged. Unfortunately, like myself before, I always assumed someone else was going to take care of things, so I just didn't participate in meetings, didn't review meeting notes or ICRC, any of that stuff. So the onus is also on the residents to be part of the process, be engaged, be involved. I do agree with Mr. Ron Vischer on using SurveyMonkey, because I think it's another avenue to reach out to residents every year to say, what's on your mind? What are the top 10 priorities that you see for the village? We're going to be going into a budget plan for next year. I think it's a perfect opportunity to get a census from residents. What do you think the village ought to be working on? So I would recommend residents to reach out with the tools that we currently have. Be engaged. Come to the town meetings. You know, the most I've ever seen in a town meeting was when the debate about the Eckstein School, whether it was going to be destroyed or not. That's the first time I've seen that many people. So, thank you.
Thank you. Amy Baldridge.
This is a great question I'm thinking a lot about. If we zoom out and look at the big picture, one of the things that's happened here, for one thing, is the village government no longer operates under the good old boy system like so much of our country did. That doesn't happen anymore. That's not how things should be anymore, and people aren't okay with that. Also enter the pandemic and all the technology that we've learned how to use as we're sitting at home and tuning into what's happening at Village Council, which many of us never really watched much before, probably including myself. So I think what we have is people who are becoming more engaged and watching and paying more attention and wanting to have a voice. And this is a good thing. This is a good problem to have if it's a problem. So I think a few ideas in terms of sharing information would be like a village Facebook page for those who are engaged with social media, and not everybody is. That's okay. But that is a little more complicated than just an individual starting their Facebook page, because it then becomes a legal entity. And so we have to think through things like freedom of speech, protected speech, and all of that. But that's a way to put information out and possibly have some dialogue. Another idea would be to have council meetings that are not the regular monthly council meeting, that would be more of an actual dialogue with the public. So that could be maybe once a month is too much, maybe as needed, or quarterly, where there really is more of a dialogue, questioning, talking back and forth. I think nothing replaces a conversation. We can do surveys, we can do polls, we can email. Me personally, if there is something coming up that requires a vote that I am torn about, I would call people in the community to ask, especially people whose perspectives are likely to be very different from mine, whose walks of life are different from mine. There is nothing that replaces hearing from another person what they're thinking. So this is a work in progress, and government changes slowly, but we're going to get there.
Thank you. Jeff Bass-Smith.
I would like to open by acknowledging progress that has been made in communications. If you look at the websites, the administrator has added additional and more frequent articles of interest, and that shows a move in the right direction. Technology would allow us to communicate better. People, my wife and many people use Facebook, and one of the limitations with Facebook, of course, is that it permits posting what is maybe false truths, inaccurate facts, and that's always a challenge. So if the village could, and it has the potential to record not only the council meeting, but to record each of the committee meetings and make it available, it can be done upon request. And if an individual cannot attend the meeting at 7 o'clock in the evening, it's available online. And that is possible through Microsoft or Google. And it is something that can be used by not only us old guys, but the young people as well, because technology is a way of life. The option or ability to talk with individuals, conversation, as Amy mentioned, is ideal, but it is often difficult because of emotions, of lost control in conversations, and it is simply a very limited method to communicate, so we need to rely on technology in many cases, but take maximum advantage of it.
Thank you. Nancy Masenko.
I've actually thought about this a bit because I'd like to improve communications by finding new ways to listen to residents. As Amy said, there's nothing that beats personal conversations. And so I was thinking, if I have another 4 years, what I'd love to do is assemble a community advisory group made up of representatives from a growing demographic in this village, young families. I see us meeting frequently to exchange ideas so I can understand what's important to them, new families. And I could carry that information into council and its committees. Then I think we also need to look at the communication platforms that residents rely on most. We should use them to frequently send and receive information. That's what I'm most concerned about. We do a pretty fair job of sending information. It's the receiving feedback that I'd like to see us improve on. Our weekly one-way emails from the village are just a start because they are one way. And I see the sign about to come up, but I need to piggyback on something that Mike said, that while the village has work to do, there's no question about that, I also think that residents have a responsibility to seek information about what's going on. Every council meeting is recorded for viewing online. All of the minutes are posted as well. There are no secrets. It's all out there. So, and minutes for committee meetings are posted on the website as well, glendaleohio.org.
Thank you. Leslie Cooper.
I feel that, well, I want to piggyback on basically what Ron said, that there needs to be another means of communication with residents of the village. The population that use social media, who have email accounts, who are able to log into the website to receive information for the village, they are connected. They are the ones that speak out. But what about the populations who do not have the internet, who are not savvy with pulling up information from local government through social media? I think there needs to be town hall meetings. I also think there needs to be robocalls. I think there needs to be surveys, not only survey monkey surveys, but there needs to be hard paper formats sent to those residents who are not connected with social media. Also, I even think there needs to be a survey to those who are not connected with social media. Maybe that portion of the population can get not handwritten, but typed up flyer newsletters versus the other half of the village receive the email newsletters online through the village website. I just think there's a population of residents that are missing the link of what's going on in the village, but also council or the mayor is not receiving information of their needs and what they're concerned about as far as village residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Time for another question. What is your plan for the future growth of revenues through new developments? Jeffrey Bass Smith.
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
What is your plan for the future growth of revenues through new developments?
That's a topic that has been discussed frequently in council meetings and resulted in a lot of emotions and a lot of signs in yards about saving Glendale's green spaces. And when you speak of developing Glendale to generate revenue, there is really only one method, and that is to either, two methods, I guess. One is to bring in property taxes from homes, or in some manner bring in some commercial development that generates significant real estate property. But going back to our previous conversations, even when you bring in, if you could bring in a commercial development, we don't have a sales tax, so, income tax, so that would not generate anything other than real estate type revenue. So that we're pretty restricted to developing the resources of land owned by the village that does qualify for either sale or development. And that's, for example, the village owned a piece of property on Coral Avenue as a result of being taken over and ultimately sold to a family who is building a new house there. The green spaces are not eligible for development, either emotionally or by law. So we're very restricted to any kind of development that generates revenue.
Thank you. Ron Vischer.
One of the things that's interesting to me is new developments is a pretty broad term, and so Jeff, Mr. Baysmith, chose to pick real estate as being an area for new development. I'm going to pick new developments in the area of working from home, for example. Glendale has got a unique situation in that it doesn't have an income tax. And as more high-wage investment advisors, people of that sort, have an opportunity to work from home, they may find that having an office in Glendale where they wouldn't have to pay income tax on their income that is earned in Glendale might be very attractive. And so if the village has got locations, buildings that might be reoriented toward rental units for offices, they may be able to rent those offices to people who would like to use them for generating revenue and would be willing to pay a higher rental rate than other communities would be able to charge. So there are revenue opportunities where we're taking advantage of our unique tax code to share the tax benefits with the people that are taking advantage of that situation. And I would be looking at opportunities like that because I think we really need to turn over a lot of stones in order to find new revenue opportunities for the village of Glendale. It's a difficult question, but I think it takes some brainstorming and creative thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Masenko?
That is a tricky question. You're right. It is very difficult. We have very limited options in this village for development, and I see it as physical property development. Council members, I have to raise this. Council members have never explored, by the way, any widespread development of village green space. I'm not sure that came about, but there was never consideration to build houses along Oak Road, as some posts were showing. What was discussed within council was the potential development of the 10-acre parcel on Glendale Avenue. And I was in favor of listening to this. I wanted to understand what the options were and how they might provide needed revenue. But as you know, during due diligence, we learned that this property isn't open to development, so that case is closed. And so our options now are extremely limited and to, as Mr. Baysmith pointed out, individual small pieces of property that village might end up owning through foreclosure. But other than that, there is no widespread opportunities for development, certainly that I'm aware of.
Alan Hoveler.
Yeah, we've been kicking this the same question down the road a long time. If you'll remember, a few years ago, we had a company that wanted to develop the landmark property into a number of small homes that when we did the numbers, the infrastructure and the cost of our police department and fire department utilities would have put the entire development at a loss to the village. So we did not like that. But the landmark property is in Glendale, and whatever happens on the landmark property, that is our biggest chance to have light industry, to have high-tech industry, to have somewhere where the tax dollars that would generate would actually be a win for Glendale. Now, we are kind of at the mercy of the Landmark Baptist Church and whoever buys it. There's my understanding that the village of Evendale has right of first refusal, and if you notice, they have already put in a road. They have started their infrastructure development on that property, but the property that they do own and they are doing is not in Glendale. So I think whatever they do there is going to be a benefit to the village, and that might be part of the saviors of our community. Other than that, there's only a few small properties that we do own, and we did create a new corporation that allows us to take those properties and get them into private hands for the benefit of the village and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Bogrand.
That's a great question. I'm glad Alan brought out Landmark. I mean, that's a good 80 acres of land in Glendale. As Alan mentioned, we don't own that. But Glendale could decide to do something with that if they could come up with an agreement with Landmark, who currently owns the property, on what could be accomplished there. I think the economics have changed. I think there's lots of opportunities that could be explored in Landmark. It would address not only additional revenue through property taxes, because we don't have an income tax. So as Mr. Vischer was saying, working from home and all that, that doesn't provide any income because there's no income tax. You need real property to be able to tax. So that would be where I would be going. The CIC has been talking this thing on the outskirts, but we've stalled out. I'm not sure why we're not moving forward on exploring more in that area. So I think that's really the opportunity. It not only would it generate revenue, but we also have the opportunity to maybe address an unmet need of empty nesters that are retirement age, that don't want to live in these big old houses and want homes that have a first floor amenities and not having to deal with climbing stairs and maintaining old properties. Those old residents are moving out of Glendale. They're going to other communities that can offer that. So that's a loss because those residents are longtime residents of Glendale, and they're very sad when they have to leave because there's no other opportunities in Glendale. So Landmark should be the focus of council, the CIC, and we ought to go beat that one to death until we get it, make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Baldridge.
To my knowledge, there isn't a whole lot of property that would even be on the table. As mentioned, there is the Landmark property, which I do think really should be explored a bit differently, perhaps, than what happened last time. I'm certain that would be somewhat contentious in the community, and it's something that would need to be very respectfully done in terms of people whose properties are close to that. But I do think, since that is a piece of land that we own, that is worth looking at again. I think there's a small piece of property up on Route 4 that could be developed into something small, quiet, office building of some sort, but it's not something that's likely to generate a lot of revenue. I was relieved to find out that what we call our green spaces really do seem to be safe right now. The Oak Road Greenbelt, for a variety of reasons, just is not suitable for development, and really what's we're looking at there is more like a park type structure, dog park, walking area, to maintain it as a beautiful green space. So those are the things that come to mind for me.
Thank you. Mike Bessel.
Thank you. I can add very little to what's already been said. There are only a few very small properties that could be developed in Glendale, and none of which would really generate any significant additional revenue. There was consideration of the Johnny Park area to do a small number of homes and enhance the space out front that could be better utilized park space. And that's a moot point because we found through due diligence that it is designated park space. We can't develop it. And that was an area where no decision had been made, but let's consider what could happen and bring that forward to the public, which we did before the thing was totally baked, or before we had all the information available for that potential development. So that one didn't happen. I feel quite certain that all of council is very protective of our parks, especially the usable parks that we have. Nobody wants to see that developed. As far as the green space goes, I agreed with the comment that we should make that a more usable green space, the Oak Road Greenbelt. First priority of business there, though, is we have engineering studies ongoing now to see if that we can help with some stormwater up in that area and create a situation that will help stormwater overflows in that part of the village. The repurposing of buildings is an interesting thought. We do have some vacant buildings now that could be purchased and utilized for a better purpose. And then, of course, landmark is something that needs to be discussed further and try to find out with landmark property ownership and coordinating with the village residents what would be a good use for that property.
Thank you. Leslie Cooper?
I think my fellow candidates are missing the point, meaning that Glendale is traditionally a residential area. It is lovely trees, walking spaces, a lovely place to live. I think that, number one, we should get feedback from the residents to see what they think and their opinion for living here, what innovation should take place in Glendale. But secondly, I think Glendale needs to network with some of the area communities, because we're this green space in the middle of Woodlawn, Sharonville, Springdale, Evendale. There has to be some other type of corporations coming in these areas where we can promote Glendale as a lovely place to live. Glendale can tap into Cincinnati's Chamber of Commerce as well as Hamilton County's Chamber of Commerce to find out what companies are coming to the area. I did hear of Cincinnati drafting a lot of international companies that are moving to Cincinnati because of tax-based purposes. I think our innovation with Glendale is not necessarily in Glendale, but the surrounding areas, but to develop Glendale as more as a safe haven, a wonderful place to live, as all of us know that it is, and generate revenues by promoting Glendale and having people move in as a wonderful community to get away from these busy areas that these companies are moving into. Thank you.
Thank you. New question. Thinking ahead for the next 4 years. What is the most critical issue facing the village during the next 4 years? Explain why and how you will address it. Amy Baldridge.
Well, I think that our economic outlook has been pretty well covered tonight, and I'm certain that that is something that is going to be discussed more in the next 4 years. And I would suspect something that would come to like a vote type situation in terms of income tax based on what I'm hearing. Infrastructurally, hands down, our biggest issues are related to water, our water supply, and our aging sewer system, what's underground. Those cannot keep going the way they are. Thankfully, it sounds like we are having some movement now. We're getting some progress made towards identifying exactly what needs to be done, where the problems are happening, and what the best path forward should be on that. So I think these are the things that we're really going to be discussing.
All right, thank you. Leslie Cooper.
Could you repeat the question once more, please?
Surely. What is the most critical issue facing the village during the next 4 years? Why do you think it's the most critical issue, and how will you address it?
I think that the biggest issue with the village is fiscal responsibility and also having fiscal transparency and communication to all residents of Glendale. I think there is areas that aren't as transparent of where money is being distributed and how it is being brought back into the village. I think the second issue is the water and sewage issues throughout all of the village, and going down the Hedgerow area to Warwick, to Summit Park, to Washington Avenue. The infrastructure with the water issue, sewage issue definitely needs to be addressed. But again, that falls back to where is the money coming from to address this issue from a fiscal perspective. And I just think there needs to be either more surveys or more feedback between the residents to council, but have a dialogue instead of just the conversation being one-sided. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Bessel.
Thank you. I think the issues that have already been brought up are the most critical issues. First of all, the financial issues. We have a current 5-year financial plan. It actually extends out beyond 5 years, but that to try to project that is very difficult. But to have a 5-year plan is very, very good. We know that it changes. It has changed over time, and to continue to work on that with an eye towards specifically the most critical issue with finances is revenue. And we've already touched on that and what we think we might do with revenue. The other, water infrastructure, water supply, sewer, and stormwater. Water supply and sewer is being marked now. There will soon be a geomap made of that. We'll be able to use that then to work with the State of Ohio Water Regional Authority to test our plumbing and see where repairs need to be made. We'll also investigate where our water lines are not large enough. We know we have some 4-inch water lines. We want to increase those. So that will be done. And again, some of the marking is in process. The implementation is forthcoming. Then with the stormwater system, the engineering is being done to look at the Oak Grove Greenbelt area. We already have funds in place to do that. We have funds to make improvements in the Hedgerow Albion area. And looking at the Oak Road area will help with Warwick and all the way down to Sharon Road. We've identified choke points that occur along the way that we'll need to make improvements. After we've done that, we should see an improvement in stormwater, and we will move to other areas of the village, especially northwest, that need some help. Finally, the last thing is roads, and roads will follow the water infrastructure improvements because we have to tear up the roads sometimes to fix the plumbing. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Masenko.
There's not much more I can add from what these guys have said. But I think the overarching issue in the next 4 years is financial. We've got to address revenue. We've got to have a sound fiscal plan for the village. We have a 5-year plan, and we are going to need to adjust that in certain ways, but we need to focus strongly on what will underpin our growth and financial stability in the future. And we have an infrastructure plan that is in the works that Mr. Bessel has just talked about. That is a secondary issue to focus on to address all of the water flow issues, Albion, Oak, Warwick. But overarching everything in my mind is the financials. And when the other part of the question, what I would recommend to address that, and it's to work collaboratively with my council members, as we have done on the Finance Committee, looking toward the future.
Thank you. Alan Howeller.
Yeah, over the next 4 years, we have a lot of challenges. Again, like everybody has said, it's been hard to budget when we are in a world right now that inflation is runaway. Last year's budget's no longer valid because of inflation. The gasoline that we cut grass with and our trucks run and our police department and our fire department run is up about 20%. It's up almost 50% since last year this time. So the inflation that we're going to face in the next 4 years is unknown. And if we don't have people on council that are business people who know how to adjust for these types of emergencies, and when we do not have the ability to gather funds from the sky, we will have in the next 4 years a upside down budget that I think the entire council is on the finance committee, and we do the budget, and the budgets are going to start pretty soon for next year. And so I think that's going to be our big picture. We can't ignore what's happening in the nation and worldwide. It does affect Glendale, and I think we have to have the right talent to face those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Beaugrand.
That's a great topic again. Money. We just need more money. We have a list of all the items that need to be fixed. We just need money to fix it, and we need to do it sooner rather than later. The reason we don't fix these things in a timely fashion is because we have to budget our funds, our limited funds, over a considerable time frame. I mean, the road in front and the sewer and all that, the water main, that should have been fixed many, many years ago, but money. So that's the biggest issue. If we can find ways to bring in more revenue, we can address the list that Mike Bessel pointed out in a timely manner. That's the biggest challenge that we have in the village. It's not creating more projects, it's just finding money in a timely manner to be able to address that. And we can't just go to our savings account like we do every year to address needs for the village. The expansion of this fire station, $800,000, came out of our savings account. The fixing of Sharon Road that we're going to get repaved here maybe in the next couple of weeks, portion of that is paid out by our savings account. Our savings account has been dwindling every year. It goes down, down, down. We do the best that we can, that's me at this time, to try to invest in whatever can make some money, but we have a lot of limitations there. And with the feds reduce their rates, the banks reduce their rates, so we get almost no money. And we use that money to fund projects. So we need money to be able to fix things. So my proposal, as I've stated it many times with council, is council needs to decide how we're going to raise funds. And I've proposed very simple avenues on what those things should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Vischer.
Well, I'd like to compliment all the people that have responded to this question before me, because they certainly have been quite thorough and addressed what I agree are the critical needs. The problems that we face are urgent. We've mentioned aging infrastructure, excessive flooding, high water bills, crumbling roads, to name just a few. The barriers to taking care of those in a timely manner are revenue issues, that we need to have the revenue. But I think overriding all of that is that in order to solve those problems, we need to have better communications with the residents. And those communication issues can help us with taxing issues and whether or not there should be an income tax. We need to have those dialogues with our residents, and we need to listen to what they say and what their priorities are and what we should address first, because there are more than enough problems to fix. And there is currently a revenue issue, and addressing that revenue issue is going to take input from the residents, and the residents are going to need to recognize that we're being open, honest, and transparent, and that we're listening to what they say. So the addition I would add is an improvement in communication that we had talked about in one of the other questions, and thanks, Pat, for asking that question of us. The only small addition I'd add is that I think one of the problems that needs to be on the list is the infrastructure and flooding problems on Cole Street. We talked about Warwick, we talked about Albion, we talked about other locations, but I think the The one that I heard about first was actually on Cole Street. So I'd like to make sure that's kept on the list. And I also would like to mention that with respect to revenue, we are a national historic district, and that makes us unique relative to opportunities for infrastructure funding, perhaps. My understanding is that COVID funding is still available. Only 8% of it has been taken by towns such as ours, and so there may be an opportunity to get a big grant for COVID. Thank you.
Jeffrey Baysmith?
One of the disadvantages of speaking last is that many of the good points have already been expressed. So it's kind of a dead horse to some extent, but I'm going to kick it again. It's like a train coming. We can see it coming, and we need to take action to get out of the way. It's already been mentioned by Alan, Mr. Howeller, about the cost of fuel, gasoline. We spend a lot of money cutting grass for the police stations, for the police cars, for cruisers. That cost has gone up. I remember at United Dairy Farmers being $1.50 about a year ago. Now it's $3. So it's going to happen. The national inflation rate is about 5% currently. And although Mr. Bessel has projected ahead, it is difficult to project ahead 5 years when you have a 5% inflation rate and don't know what to expect beyond the next year, certainly. So we've got to take action. And although I may not get votes because I discuss taxes and an income tax, it's really basically the quickest and most necessary option we have. We have comments about how Glendale looks and how it used to be and how we'd like to have it and what we'd like to do with it. We don't have the money to do that. Drive through Wyoming or Indian Hill or areas that have an income tax. They can afford to do those things. We have no option. The train is coming. If we want to get out of the way, if we want to improve things, we have to take action soon. And it appears that the only alternative is a small tax. It was mentioned, I think, by Amy or by Mr. Beaugrand, a simple 1/4%. Think about that when it costs you how much a 1/4% is on a Big Mac. Not much. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Do we have time for one little question to be answered in 1 little minute?
Well, I said that we were going to be closing it at 8:45 and it's 8:33, so we have all the time.
Oh, no. One minute. 1 minute.
Oh, it's a lightning round.
Because this is the lightning round. And I especially liked this question that was submitted. You know, the questions were submitted by the citizens. 1 minute. Please tell us about your, as a citizen, volunteer service experiences in Glendale. Starting with Alan.
I'm sorry, I did not hear that question.
Okay. Tell us about your, as a citizen, volunteer service experiences in Glendale.
Okay, well, as a citizen, we chose to move to Glendale because of the fact that I'm a preservationist, and these homes are one of the prettiest places in the entire county of Hamilton. We bought a house here because we enjoyed the ambiance, we enjoyed the people, we enjoy living here, and I think that it's been a pleasure being here, and it's been a pleasure serving this village. And I wouldn't exchange that experience for anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Bass Smith.
I have been here a while in the village and have volunteered for all of the many things that are available in Glendale. I have coached soccer. I have raised funds. It's been some time, but you'll notice that the speed sign that we see on the street, monitoring people's speed and traffic, we raise funds for that. I've worked with some of the projects developed by, for example, Ms. Mazenko here to pave basketball courts and cut grass. And so these are all things very important, and the things that make Glendale a remarkable place to live.
Thank you. Leslie Cooper.
Well, as a child in Girl Scouts, which is a volunteer organization, we planted trees in the Oak Street Greenbelt. We've picked up litter. We've sung to, the younger elementary school kids. Upon me returning to Glendale, I'm a member of the Planning and Historic Preservation Commission. I volunteered on the Glendale Elementary School Reunion Committee. I've also participated in the Princeton Educational Fund Gala, even though that's not Glendale specific. I transport seniors. I also help pick up trash that's in the Cleveland Avenue Park. So that's been my support since I've been returned to Glendale.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Vischer.
Well, I'm pretty excited about what I'm currently doing. Before this meeting, I was volunteering as a tennis pro with the elementary school students at Glendale Elementary. The Brock Foundation has started a program to provide after-school tennis lessons, and Tony Brock and I convinced the Glendale Lyceum to make their tennis courts available. So the Lyceum is also having an outreach to the community to provide enrichment for the 4th and 5th graders. And we had about 20 kids there today, so I'm excited about that. I also was, as Jeff Baysmith was, a GYS soccer coach for about 5 years. I think we won 8 championships. We played both spring and fall, so we were a very powerful team. I've been on the Glendale Lyceum Board of Directors, and I'm currently an officer in the Glendale Literary Society. So.
Thank you. Amy Baldridge.
I have served on the board of Harry Whiting Brown Community Center for, I think it's 9 years now. So various events happening in the village, planning, selling hot dogs, collecting dollar bills, things like that for Harry Whiting Brown. I've been a member of the Centennial Garden Club for 13 years, and so we manage one of the gardens in the village square. And about a year and a half ago, I took over the sort of overall management or maintaining of that space, making some changes and updates that needed to happen. I've been also a volunteer soccer coach with Glendale Youth Sports, coach/cat herder. Not sure what the appropriate description is of that job. So that's been fun. A couple of years ago, I organized and helped facilitate a home alone safety class for tween age kids, along with Dave Warman and Officer Rocks, and that was really fun. That was a success. This spring, I organized a group of children from our block with another mom friend, and we picked up a ridiculous amount of garbage from the Oak Road green space. So those are some of the things I've done.
Thank you. Mike Bessel.
I've served with Glendale Youth Sports on their board and was president of GYS for a number of years. Also coached baseball and soccer, several different teams. I had 6 children, so I was coaching a lot. And I continue to coach the instructional T-ball and soccer for Glendale Youth Sports today. Gets me my kid fix because they're all grown and gone now. Mine are. I participated in the recent Volunteer Day, which was fantastic. That was a really great event. We rebuilt a baseball field years ago up at Summit Park. A bunch of volunteer dads and I did. We've done fundraising for all kinds of various funding things, going back to the fundraising that was done for the fire pumper that we have now, the fire truck. Help take care of some older residents, either through visits or taking them places or helping them with dinner and various small household tasks, people that live nearby. Participated in I'm sorry.
Thank you. Nancy Masenko.
I also was a part of that volunteer day. We painted the shelter at Washington Park and watched these guys paint the basketball courts. The wrong one, but we painted that. I headed communications for the Quiet Zone effort, which was about a 2 or 3 year project, so that was quite consuming as a volunteer job. I served as president and continue as a trustee of Glendale Heritage Preservation, and that allowed me to be the developer and the producer of the Women of Glendale exhibit that is in the museum now. I also painted streetlights as a part of the Glendale Heritage Preservation Program. And for the past 2 summers, as a private citizen, I brought Burwinkle Farms to the village. Let the record show. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Beaugrand.
So, over 35 years. So as Mike Bessel mentioned, I was with GYS. I was vice president in GYS, coached soccer also. GHP, I was a trustee and led the pancake breakfast for many years early on. Volunteer with GHP to paint and clean and fix anything and everything. St. Gabriel's, always supported the festival that we used to have until COVID. I was also a Boy Scout committee chair for our Boy Scout troop here in Glendale for quite a long time. And my son participated, and we volunteered the Boy Scouts to clean up Glendale and do a lot of other activities here. So, and I was also a volunteer with the HWB, basically taking care of the Boy Scout house. So, that's it.
We'll give you an ASL applause for your service. I love that. Closing statements. 1.5 minutes. We'll start with the treasurer candidates. Leslie Cooper.
Okay. How I would like to close is, of course, thanking Harry Whiting Brown for having the candidates forum. And things to remember about me. I have an MBA with 25 years of service. I worked up and down the East Coast, so I have accrued knowledge to bring back to Glendale to share different skill sets and different knowledge base for the upcoming position if elected. I am the 4th generation Glendalian. My family has served this village for over 100 years in different capacities. My father was president of his senior class at Glendale High School, and I had a great aunt who was honored as a notable resident in 1997. So my heart is in Glendale to serve Glendale on various capacities. But the key thing that I want you to remember about me is collaboration. I think at this point in time, there needs to be collaborative efforts, not only with Glendale Council or with the mayor. There needs to be collaboration with other entities in Hamilton County and Southwestern Ohio and Cincinnati to help find funding, to be fiscally responsible, to create and continue fiscal transparency and communication to the residents of Glendale. So please vote Leslie Cooper for Village Treasurer on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Michael Beaugrand.
So we have heard from the candidates tonight, all residents of Glendale stepping up to give of themselves to support our village at zero compensation. Let's not get mired in the self-serving personal crusade or politic. Instead, let's focus on moving the village forward. I may not personally support the views of all candidates, but if I'm still your treasurer, I will work with all of them to make progress towards a better Glendale. That said, I would encourage some residents to tend to get their facts from Facebook to actively engage in the meetings that are always taken at a public setting and can be viewed on ICRC. The mayor does not permit any private meetings of council. No secrets, regardless what some have said. Doesn't happen, never will. To the point of fiscal responsibility and transparency, all the information is available to all residents in the Ohio checkbook site. Every check is visible. Everyone can see those. I'm personally happy that Eckstein Building will be renovated by the Land Bank and Cincinnati Preservation Association, and hope that they can resurrect the building for all the residents to enjoy. Our biggest challenge is to ensure that Glendale remains a viable community for years to come. In my opinion, we need additional revenue sources, but I'm worried that not all are on the same page. I fully understand some residents need help, and the village has stepped up many times to help those in need. Fortunately, many local organizations and private residents do the same. I look forward to the result of the election. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Fisher.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Bet, and the Harry Whiting Brown Community Center for sponsoring this forum. It's a privilege to be able to address the residents of our wonderful community. In closing, I'd like to emphasize 3 points. First, improved solutions to old problems may require new ideas, and new ideas will come best from new council members. Indeed, many of our problems are the old ones of replacing an aging infrastructure, the need for increased revenues, and increased appreciation of diverse viewpoints. Our worn-out approaches to these old problems may no longer be the best solutions, or the issues would already be solved. Difficult problems required experienced leadership, and if elected, I'll work hard to address them. Second, we need to update our long-term financial plan. Recent economic trends are changing, and we need new thinking to address the trends. Inflation may start to increase our costs, I think we mentioned that previously, and our revenues come from many pockets. The question that I ask is, should we be more persistent in pursuing grants and donations to help avoid tax increases? Third, improved solutions require broad-based community involvement and collaboration. We need to return to things like town hall discussions so that all residents might come together and agree on a common path. Glendale deserves better, and in this way, we can do better in addressing our needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Masenko.
I'm asking for another 4 years on council because there's still work to be done, obviously, to reiterate priorities. I'll work with council to develop a sound fiscal plan for the village to underpin our growth and financial stability well into the future. I'll work to implement Glendale's infrastructure strategy, focusing on the roads and underground utilities on the side streets. I'd like to work on improving the Oak Road Greenbelt, making it more park-like for walkers, runners, and Glendale dog owners. And last, but perhaps the most important priority that we've talked about over and over tonight, I want to increase and improve communications between village government and residents with timely information and opportunity for feedback. I share your frustration over misinformation about the village that so often consumes social media. I mean, doesn't it seem like sometimes we communicate best through yard signs? I know we can do better. I'm pleased to have served you for the past 4 years, and I hope to have a second opportunity to help the village thrive without losing one fiber of what makes it unique. If I'm elected, I promise to work hard, listen to all voices, and always make decisions on what I believe is best for the entire village and every neighbor in it. And I'd be honored to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Howeller.
Yeah, let me start off by saying thank you so much for having this forum and for us to be able to express some of our ideas. There is nothing that we do on council that can't be improved. There's nothing in life that we do that can't be improved. We have a group of people on council right now, the incumbents that are running here, that are a working group of people that we don't always agree with how we do things and what's being done, but we work it out. And this is a non-paying volunteer job, and we spend an enormous amount of our personal time to make sure that this village runs like a well-oiled machine. It takes more than talent, it takes desire. I think that myself, I've been on council a long time. I think our incumbent group right now is a pretty good, well-oiled machine. I hope everybody votes for the incumbents. And with that, I'll yield my time.
Thank you. Mike Bessel.
Thank you, and thank you again to HWB and the League of Women Voters and everyone involved in putting this together. It is a privilege to be able to speak to our residents about our ideas and our thoughts about council and village government, and I'm happy to do so. I've heard tonight village communication needs to be improved. We've known that for quite some time. It is a difficult thing to do, but if we continue to listen to our residents and seek feedback from them and try to stay as transparent as we possibly can, I think that can be accomplished. I do believe we've been fiscally responsible. It's been difficult to keep our budget balanced given all the circumstances that we live with and the lack of revenue. I think there's been good planning going forward, and we are making positive steps towards our infrastructure improvements. Finally, I'd just like to say that as council people, we are stewards of our village, and we serve at the pleasure of the residents. I understand this. You can choose to vote for us or not. As I've said many times, if we're not doing the job right, throw the bums out. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it's your choice. We're responsible to protect and preserve all the good aspects of our village and the quality of life residents have come to expect here. We should work to improve the village's financial strength, services, communication, resources, amenities, and overall livability of the village. We need to keep the village strong and viable for future generations as those who have come before us have done for us. Thank you. And I would be honored to serve again on council.
Thank you. Jeffrey Bass Smith.
I'd ask for your vote. I've been on council as an appointed councilman for just 25 months. And in that time, I have learned a lot. The mayor kindly assigned me to be the chair of the Utilities Committee, the Enterprise, and of the Parks Committee. I have spent, without exaggeration, hundreds of hours going over data of production, of billing, looking at the various issues with the utilities, and I feel very close to that effort. I am asking that I am allowed to continue that because there are many, many things left to do. I want to take a moment because as a councilman in meetings, we don't get an opportunity to respond very often. These people, in the 25 months I have been here at some of these meetings, have been called names, have been accused of being corrupt, and have been told we're keeping secrets. I assure you that as I have watched very closely, there is nothing to support those claims. The job is well done with every effort to make it the best possible solutions and the best possible efforts for the village. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Baldridge.
I want this village to thrive. I love Glendale just like everybody here. My concern is that the path we are on right now will allow us to get by, but not truly thrive. And sometimes I think that here in Glendale, we love ourselves so much. This is a historic community. We don't want to change anything. We want to be really strong, and we want to thrive, but we don't want to change anything. And I think we have to open our minds and our hearts to just a little bit something new and different that will help set us up for success in the future and keep us as a competitive place to live, frankly. A few months ago, I felt like a fish out of water running for this position as I scurried around collecting my signatures on my nominating petition. But in the last few months, as I have really tried to dive deep and learn what this job is all about, I've realized I can do this job. And I would be honored to have the opportunity to just sprinkle in a little something new and a new perspective. I agree that these folks have done a very good job. They don't deserve vilification. They don't deserve rumors to be spread. If we have questions, we need to call and ask the right person and go to the source. So I appreciate what all of the incumbents have done so far, and regardless of whether I'm elected, you will have my support and my collaboration. So thank you.
Just went down the wrong way. Thank you. Citizens have a lot to think about. Appreciate your answers, appreciate your sticking to the time frame, and appreciate your civility. Amy and her committee, outstanding job. I just want to say online, Hamilton County, Ohio Board of Elections, you can find your ballot because you'll just put in your address, so it will be specific to you. Find your ballot, find out who's running for what, so on and so forth. But additionally, you can get more information on the league's vote411.org. Vote411.org. You could also find your ballot, but in addition to that, the candidates are on there with their pictures, their bios. They've been asked questions about their qualifications and what they will do for whatever office they're running for. And the issues are on there with explanations. Vote411.org, my recommendation. Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure. Amy?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bet. You did a terrific job tonight. I think everyone can agree. Wow, I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming. I think that it's been really enlightening. It's been riveting. I hope the people out there found it equally as riveting. I want to thank the Glendale Fire Department for coming and setting everything up for us. I would like to thank Mayor Lofty for his assistance in helping me organize, for putting me in touch with resources that I needed in the village in order to get this thing set up without overtaxing any one certain group. ICRC-TV, fantastic. I can't believe they just show up and do this. And the League of Women Voters for providing the moderator, and of course everyone out here who watched it. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.